If you've watched my last couple of videos, you'll know that I've recently bought a Nikon Z7 II camera, and also that it's summer and I've been out doing some woodland photography in summer. I've been spending a lot of time in woodlands just during the middle of the day trying to get some nice photographs. So a few days ago I was in this area and I took a couple of shots, and I want to revisit these locations today. If the light holds like this, I may retake them. But I got a couple of nice enough shots, and I want to cover 3 woodland photography tips. These are things that I do every time I'm out in the woodland, and I find that it helps me get better photographs, and hopefully it'll do the same for you. So I've arrived at the first spot from which I took a photograph a couple of days ago, and it's looking quite nice at the moment. The light is still quite nice and soft, so I'm going to reshoot this one today. I think I prefer the light now as to the conditions I had the previous day. So we'll get set up, we'll talk you through the composition, and we'll go over my first tip for woodland photography. So let's have a look at the composition that I've got set up here. It's quite an interesting scene, and I'll show you a little video clip, but keep in mind that the final aspect ratio for my photograph will be square, a 1:1, so it's going to look different from what it does in the video. But we've got this interesting tree here, which has got some interesting shapes. There's some really nice textured bark here, almost appears scale-like on the tree, and I'm using this section here obviously as framing for this nice tree off in the distance, and the sun is coming in from my right, this direction at the moment, so I've got some nice side lighting. A few things I need to be aware of, just minding that I don't get these parts here crossing over, and I've just got some nice framing of this tree set up in the composition, so I quite like it. It's an interesting shot, and the grasses here add to the composition as well. So the tip that I want to give you is to be very mindful when you're out doing woodland photography of your depth of field. Be very conscious of which parts of your image are sharp and in focus and which parts are slightly out of focus. I think it's fair to say that for most people, when they're doing landscape photography, taking in vistas and so on, everyone's striving to get the whole image sharp from front to back. And many times that's justified, and I do that many times myself. But when I'm out doing woodland photography, the majority of the time, I'm not wanting an image completely sharp from front to back. And the reason for that is to try and show in my image what I want the viewer to concentrate on. So in this case, it'll be this dead tree, and have the background slightly softer, but I still want it sharp enough that you can make out some detail in the background of this scene. But I really want to separate the two. I want to make my foreground, this tree, the scale-like bark, I really want that to stand out, and then I want the background to be slightly softer. So I do that by obviously selecting the correct aperture and being very mindful of my depth of field. And we need to bear in mind as well, when we view these images in print form or on a screen, they're in 2D, but as I stand here I can see great depth in the scene. And just by using a shallower depth of field, slightly softening the background, we can really make our main subject stand out. Otherwise, I feel in woodland everything just gets compressed together when you look at the final image if it's sharp from front to back. And another way that I like to view it is that I think woodland images need to be natural, And the way our own eyes work, if I stand here right now and I focus on this sort of skeletal tree in front of me, the background is soft, it's out of focus. If I then look at the tree in the background, this tree becomes out of focus. I can't have everything sharp with the way my own eyes work. So I like to try and duplicate that sensation in my images. So at the moment, the video that I'm recording here is set at f14, so pretty much the whole scene will be in focus. So I've now set my aperture to f5.6 for the video, and you should see that there's a lot more separation between this tree and the background woodland. And I think that's far more effective, it's more pleasing to the eye. The background will be a bit softer in the video than I want in my final photograph. I think I'm going to use something around f8, because in this case I do want the details in the background to be noticeable in the image. I don't want them to be pin sharp. I just want a little bit of separation, but I really do like that tree in the background and the way the light's hitting it. So I do want some of the detail to be visible, but soft enough to get that separation. And it's also useful in woodland. Sometimes there's parts of a woodland that it's very chaotic that you wouldn't want to be in your image, but you can't exclude it. So in this case, there's another I think it's a dead tree just behind this one, just to the left. And to try and hide it behind this one, I ruin my composition. But because it's going to be slightly soft in the image, it's not quite as noticeable and not really an issue. So I'll show you the image. I hope this tip's been useful, and then we'll move on to my second spot. So I'm just walking through the woodland here, making my way to the next spot from which I want to take a photograph. And my next tip is quite a simple one really. It's going to be quite quick to explain, but I really can't express just how important it is in order to find nice photographs in the woodland. So as we're walking along here, we're always looking ahead, paying attention, trying to scan what's in front of us, look to our left, look to our right, and we can often find nice things to photograph. There's a few things here I'm pretty sure I could get a decent image of, but the main thing that I think it's important to do, and it's quite a simple tip but people forget, and I know a lot of people don't even do this, it's always just to look behind us as we walk. So now I've got a totally different look to this area that I'm in, and I believe there's a nice composition here. And this is the scene that I saw the other day, and I only found it just by looking behind me. If I hadn't looked behind me, I would never have found this shot. Now I need to get my camera set up, use a different focal length, but hopefully you can see there's a potentially nice composition there. But I need to use a longer focal length just to get it set up the way that I want. So always look behind you when you're walking through the woodland, and maybe some compositions will magically appear. So tip number 2, which I've just given you, is what enabled me to discover this scene, and it's a scene that I'm really fond of. I don't think there's a fantastic composition facing this way, but looking from where the camera is now back this direction, I think there's a really nice composition, one which certainly appeals to me. So the third and final tip I want to give you in this video is when you're out doing woodland photography, really pay close attention to the light, both the quality of the light and the areas within the scene in which that light is falling, and just pay close attention and observe what the light is doing to your scene. Now when I'm out in woodland, I always find it very peaceful, it's relaxing, so I think a nice soft gentle light, diffused quiet light complements woodland photography. So I'm always on the lookout for that, but it's not enough just to have the light, it needs to be falling on the correct places in your composition. And that is one of the things that I had yesterday which really drew me to this scene and made me want to photograph it. And the light is fairly similar today. So it's falling in key areas. If you notice, paths work extremely well in woodland. We've got the light off in the area behind me, so the path is leading you to that light. A key part of the composition is this stone bridge here. We've got light on that, nice soft light. And this tree here has got a very light trunk, so the nice soft light is enhancing that and drawing your eye there. So it's falling in all the correct places. Also at the bottom left of the shot, as you see it now, there's some nice light on the path which helps lead your eye in. And then off to the bottom right, on the ferns and on those silver birch, you should be seeing that there's some nice soft gentle light on there as well. So I really couldn't have placed the light better. I think it works fantastic for this scene. And we've also got the contrasting slightly darker areas, so I think the balance of the light is fantastic. And if it had been completely flat, the scene would not look nearly as good as it does to my eye today and also yesterday. And the other thing that I want to mention briefly about light is, and this is subjective of course, but I always prefer natural light. I think the light that nature gives us is much better and more natural looking in images than anything you can do in editing software. That's just my personal opinion, but I think the light, if it's falling in the correct places, is beautiful and it looks natural. I think people who perhaps try to add too much light or brighten areas in their images, it can start to look unnatural. So it's something that an experienced photographer can sometimes just see very easily in an image. So I prefer to get scenes captured when the light is beautiful and not really do much to them in post-production. But that's just my personal preference. I certainly edit my images and I have nothing against editing, but I think I get my best results using natural light. So always pay close attention to that. I'll show you the image and I hope you like it. As always, I've really enjoyed my time in the woodland today, out with my camera. It really is a nice relaxing experience, and I hope you've enjoyed watching this video. Hopefully you'll find the 3 tips and ideas useful, and it's maybe something you can incorporate into your woodland photography next time you're out. But as always, I really appreciate you taking the time to watch. Thank you so much, and hopefully I'll see you in my next one.